Welcome back, everybody, to Media Made Me here on the Brazilian Dragon podcast. I am Felipe, the titular Brazilian Dragon, and happy 2024 officially on the podcast, even though we are in our second month already. But do we have a great kickoff podcast for you all this year? We are joined by the one, the only, Matt Scott. Matt, how are you doing? Welcome back to the podcast.
Happy to be here and just to be talking with you, Felipe. It's always a gift to talk with you and
You're
to
such a
be
king.
in your presence, in the presence of just everything. You're a king. You're a king, the Brazilian Dragon. But more than anything, just like the love that you have for everyone around you, myself included, just makes this that much more of a joy. In fact, I'm gonna call it right now. This is my favorite podcast that we've ever done together. I'm putting out there.
It's not a competitive field. It's this and Harry I, and then the queer voices of RHAP.
Right. Within the Pride Has Spoken podcast.
Yes.
Right.
Is
Yeah.
that it? Is that all we're on? That's kind of criminal that we haven't done
No.
more
Is
together,
it?
but
Oh my
yeah.
gosh. I guess so. But yeah, you know what? Just
Well,
edit
well,
out
well,
that part where you clarified that it wasn't that many podcasts,
but
and
it's okay.
this is still gonna
Hey,
be the
hey,
greatest.
this will be the greatest that we might ever do,
Oh
potentially.
no.
Potentially. No, no.
The next one will be better,
This is
but
this is motivation for us to do more stuff together.
it is. It is.
Yes.
We'll make it happen.
Um, but Matt, first of all, how are you?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good. Life is moving. Media's continuing to make me.
Yes.
I'm continuing to make media. And I was just telling you before recording, like, just about to film a bunch of interviews that I'm gonna put out there for this docu-series I work on through work that's focused on people working on climate change, people of color, but
Woo!
also a lot of queer people in the mix in the San Francisco Bay Area working on climate change stuff. So I'm good. I've been calmer. I've been calmer for sure. But
We love
this is a
that.
good time to like slow down and reflect and breathe. And
Now,
I'm excited for that.
question.
Yes,
If
please.
anyone is a silly Billy and doesn't know who you are, do you want to do a little introduction?
Oh my gosh, yes. My name is Matt Scott. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a young Black queer person. I am a podcaster on Rob Has a Podcast, just to start with the podcasting stuff and how we know each other. And I started as part of the class of 2020 in 2020. And believe it or not,
I thought it
and
was 2015.
I don't even know. Like, it's hard. I lose track of time. And actually, it is kind of wild that that was like almost 4 years ago, which it does not feel like it's been that long. But among other things, I am the host or co-host of a show called The Wrestling Wrap Up, talking about pro wrestling with the one and only Mari Forth. And we just have a lot of fun, just, being friends, being buds, having some guests on, talking wrestling stuff. And that's I have a feeling that will probably come up as we talk today. But other than that, I am the host of Pod Friends on Rob's podcast, interviewing people in the community and just diving into who they are and their stories. And it's just like I would say one of the great joys of like who I am is getting to interview people. So I mentioned like the work I do is in the climate space, leading a storytelling program at a global nonprofit, and I also interview folks there and like love to dive in and just create comfortable spaces to share people's stories because representation matters. And I love to center voices that often go unheard, especially of Black and brown people, of queer people, of just others that deserve to be highlighted in the work I do. So that's just a little bit about me. And I know this isn't the time for plugs, but Matt Scott GW on all of the social media. I'm a Taurus. I live in Washington, D.C. I'm gonna stop actually while I'm ahead. I don't want to dox myself too much, but yes,
Yeah, you
that's
don't
a
want to.
little bit
You don't
about me.
want. You don't want the BB
From New
Twitter
Jersey.
girlies to come and
Oh
like
no.
when you're on the show and like send hate mail to your loved ones.
No, I'm not even gonna comment on that because I'm like, will Big Brother come up on this? Who knows? But let me just say, I will never be on Big Brother. That's and I would not. I can't. That show scares me. It's terrifying.
Valid, very valid. No, you mentioned Pod Friends, and I just want to give you your flowers because that is one of the best things RHP has ever done.
Thank
Pod
you.
Friends, and also like there's definitely inspiration in Pod Friends. I feel like the two biggest inspirations for Media Made Me was like Pod Friends,
Mm.
and Mike Bloom always making Simpsons references on many of his podcasts, and I feel like that was
Including
kind of
yeah,
including Pod
including on a
Friends.
Pod Friends episode, which I would say, like, is, at least from what I've heard from the community, what not that there's a ranking at all, there isn't, but, one of, like, the Pod Friends episodes that really resonated with folks and hit home. So
If you
listen
were
to
to like
the
listen and
yes.
like plug a podcast of Pod Friends that is like this is what Pod Friends is, that would be
I
like one.
I mean, look, I would say maybe not to start on that because it might be like the peak of my podcasting career, and then I'll just maybe go downhill from everything else. But
Absolutely
no,
not.
no. But I would say to listen to that. As you know, Felipe, like we had so many different live events and things that we've been to. Not only Rob as a podcast, but like Bryson when present and that community. And I couldn't go a single event without hearing from like at least one person, but usually like multiple people who reference that episode.
Yeah.
So I'd say to check that episode of Pod Friends out from January 2023.
Yeah. So I mentioned in the pre-show I called Kevin and Nigel dads. But
Ooh,
my
yeah.
my big dad, my dad is Mike Bloom. He
Daddies.
is father.
Oh
He and Rob are my fathers, I feel like.
my,
In the podcasting, like I feel like I was raised by them as podcasters,
uh-huh.
and like I definitely pull a lot of inspiration from them.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you can be like big brother because I've pulled a lot of inspiration from you
Oh my gosh.
as a podcast consumer. Definitely Media Made Me has elements of Pod Friends, but I really love to focus on like the intersection between consumption and identity, which I think is
Yeah.
different than Pod Friends because you're like very much like a what's your story, like how like,
Yes.
and
That's I was gonna
you
say they're
do a
so
really good
different.
job of bonding with people and finding your part of your story that connects with them. Like I mean, I was listening to a
Mm,
couple of episodes while at work to like prep for this podcast, re-listening to some, listening to some that I missed in the
mhm.
first run, and just like you're really good at like this is give Matt Scott his flowers moment, but
I appreciate it.
you're really good at like connecting yourself to their story and like empathizing with them, but then also like finding a way to like guide them to like share more and more. And I feel like obviously, like you said, you don't want to do Big Brother. If you were ever to be on one of these shows, I feel like you would be situated so well because your social game
Oh.
is very strong and you're just like a very likable person. I think like the hardest part for you, I feel like, would be like separating like your actual essence of who you are
Oh,
to be
no.
cutthroat.
It's easy. It's easy. And this is the thing that I think maybe this podcast better than maybe any other podcast that I've been on will shine a light on is that I'm like there I mean look, all of us are complicated people,
Yeah.
right? And there's all sorts of sides to us and I do think that the media that made me, oh, look at the podcast title. Matt just referenced the podcast title. I do think the media that made me is like gives a gives a better sense of like who I am more holistically than any one thing, than like pod friends or interviewing people in climate, or like there's so much where you're like, Matt, that feels strange for you. Like I wouldn't expect that you like that thing and also like that you're not a sociopath. And I'm like, yeah, it's possible. At least I assume I'm not a sociopath,
I
but
don't
maybe
think
I'll
you are.
figure
I feel like you're too
I,
much of like
I'm pretty sure I'm
sympathetic,
not.
empathetic person to be. Like you don't
Yeah,
give
no.
Jeffrey Dahmer
No,
girly.
no, 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 no. I don't. Yeah, I figure I'm pretty confident in that. But it is interesting. Like the yeah, I think there's a lot that we're gonna uncover. And you're right, there are differences with Pod Friends, but I love how with Media Made Me, you also do something that we don't really do. Like on podcasts, so often it's about talking about the shows, talking about the media, and then kind of moving on to the next piece of media that comes out and the next one. But we don't talk about the people behind the media and why they're super interested in it. And so sometimes I'll get into that a little on Pod Friends, but really, like you said, it's about people's stories. And so I just love how I love being your big brother. but I also would never be on Big Brother,
Yes,
as you
no,
mentioned.
we
Those
established
live
that.
side note, those live feeds are insane, and the
Honestly, my
Twitter
hot
fandom is not right. Like I'm not. I don't want to. I can't deal with
listen,
that.
like I'm not gonna come out here and be like, Taryn, don't get your coin, because I know that's like what he loves the most about Big Brother is the live feeds. But also I do think that like people who were like saying cancel Big Brother Canada because they decided to have different types of live feeds last year.
I
I'm
know,
like,
right?
I respect and understand the need to hold people accountable for their actions and that like you want to see the strategy unfolding. But I also think that in this
Mm,
year of 2024, we don't need to see absolutely everything. We can like have like times that the live feeds are on and then times the live feeds are out. I think it's very
yeah.
weird when people like watch the contestants sleeping and monitor what their activities are.
It's
Just like
it's a choice for
it's
sure. It's
voyeurism.
someone should write a book about it. I think that there's a lot there. I also, to your point about the, I thought it was so cool when they look. Don't cancel me, people. Well, actually, cancel me if you want. It's fine. I'm fine if you don't resonate with this. But yeah, like I don't. I think it's amazing. Like if
The
Big Brother
narrative
US
on the
didn't have,
television show is going to be what it is regardless,
it
whether you like
is.
it or not. So like what's the harm of like
If
actually like
Yes. If Big Brother US didn't have live feeds, I would definitely be more likely to do Big Brother US, but also I probably wouldn't because the fandom is still pretty toxic at
mhm.
times, and we can be part of that fandom and also still recognize its toxicity.
I think
So that's what it is.
I know she was on Twitter almost
Uh-oh.
as long as she was on Survivor 4, but Hannah Rose, when she popped on Twitter,
Don't do that.
was very much about positive vibes. And I feel like that is the kind of
We could
energy I
do
want to
hard
bring forth for
things.
2024. Like, yes,
Yeah.
I'm working on like trying to, at least in my own life, spin it to if I am upset with a player for not making the move I want, instead of putting blame and being like, this person's an idiot or a moron, to quote my favorite Abby Maria, be
Mm,
like, no, person A is just so good at the game, even if it's against my fave, they like played their social game well enough that convinced my fave to make a dumb choice. A choice that was against their best interest. I'm trying to like spin it in my head because I feel like positive vibes are so important. We are on these online
mm,
streets which are very toxic. I think that's something I really appreciate about you is that you're very much a positive vibe king. Like you give people their flowers, you want to celebrate their successes, and that's something that I've always really admired about you and why you've always been a standout for me in the podcasting community because like you actually want to celebrate people's wins and be there when they're struggling and make sure that like we focus on the positive because there's so much negativity in the world and like yes, you're willing to call it out when you need to, but
sure.
like you're not avoiding these topics, but you're also
But
like you want to
yeah.
celebrate people for who they are, and I think that comes from your experience as a black queer person.
Yeah, and I mean, and so much more too, right? You know, there's a lot that makes any of us who we are. That those are definitely huge pieces of it. But
I was just
to your
listening to the
point,
Bryce interview again, and I think that's part of the reason that stood out. It was because like you're
no,
giving him your flowers, and then he's giving you
oh,
the flowers, and it's just
oh,
like,
wow, yeah, I do hear that interview now that you mention it and just what you said. But no, it's interesting because like you know, in even when it's holding people accountable, let's say, like that's in service of protecting people and showing love for people, at least from where I come from it at. And it's not worth, you know, doing anything or being part of anything or any part of community or any part of media if it's not like serving you and like supporting you and filling you. And I just want everyone to, you know, have a great time. And if I could help influence that, then that's what I'm down for. That's what I'm here for.
let's take it all the way back to the
Oh,
early days of Mascot. Were you always a positive vibes baby, or
oh
were
my
you
God.
were
What kind
like
of question? Is
what
this
like were you a
Pod
Sesame
Friends?
Streeter? Were you a Arthur? What
Oh.
was the media that you watched? Like lighthearted stuff, or were you like watching like I don't know, what's an unhinged baby content?
Unhinged baby content. I like the idea. I think that could be its own like
Like, what do the
section of shows.
sociopath babies watch
I
that
don't
make
know.
them that way?
I would not know. But I will say that it's an interesting question of what I watch. So I grew up as like the youngest of three older siblings, and like my oldest sister's 8 years older. Next sister's like 4 or 5 years older, and then my brother's like 2 years older or so. And so a lot of what I consumed was a lot of like stuff that was like a little bit above my age, the age appropriateness. So like I'm sure when I was really baby Matt Scott, I watched like Sesame Street here and there. I did watch Arthur at points. I watched Little Bill. I remember loving Little Bill. Um, you know, just I love Little Bill,
Yeah,
the character and that show, right?
let's leave
And
it in the
yeah,
time capsule. We don't have to
exactly,
unpack it. Yeah.
exactly. And you know, but then I even think there was a lot of great, like, and this is maybe a little slightly older, or as I got slightly older, but like looking at things in syndication, there were shows like Family Matters and like Full House and all of those family sitcoms. Saved by the Bell was something I would watch like every day before going to school for a long stretch of time in syndication, because that was like mostly in the late 80s and early 90s that came out. I was also a fan of this show called Captain Planet and the Planeteers,
Yeah, that makes so much
which was
sense.
like, which I actually like talk about a lot in the work that I do, putting it out there. And X-Men was there. Power Rangers was my thing too, but from the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Like I had such a big crush on Kimberly, the Pink Ranger back in the
So
day.
many
I
people have a
think
crush on the
I,
Pink
I
Ranger.
think the budding bisexual in me at the time was like, oh, like there's something I really like about, you know, Tommy, who was either the Green or White
He was the
Ranger,
green, I
depending
think.
on the time. Depending, yeah, I think he
Yeah,
was the Green first, and
I
maybe the White
associate him
Ranger
with the
after that.
green more.
Yeah, I know. I think he's mainly the Green Ranger, but like it was like that type of thing where something that I found in retrospect that I really resonate with was one, like diverse or characters who had some form of diversity. Now, I was consuming all sorts of stuff, so we could like I could just let me just name drop like Clarissa Explains It All and that like whole Nickelodeon era. I barely remember it, but I remember watching a lot of that. But more than anything, like things like X-Men, Power Rangers, Captain Planet, um, and then we'll get to like pro wrestling. But I look in retrospect and see I really resonated with these shows that either had like characters who I somehow felt represented by, or like shows that just had a diverse cast of people. Like even with X-Men, it's like all these different powers and backgrounds, which like when you are someone from like intersectional identities or from like who is not like in the majority, like it feels nice to watch folks that are, you know, outside of that. And you know, there's like again X-Men, Power Rangers, you know, a lot of the shows I
It's
mentioned kind
so
of gave that.
interesting that
Yeah.
like you love the X-Men. Like, I think there's like something that we can unpack about like how these are like very campy, like also fighting, and there's something there
Yeah.
where I can connect it to wrestling, right? But
Oh,
more
100%.
importantly, like the X-Men, like are minorities. They are like
Mhm.
if you like think about the stories, it's like, oh, they are like mutants and people are rude to them, and they're like essentially like people of color in America. Like they are treated
Yeah.
compared to the normal superhero or
Uh-huh.
normal human. So it's like something
Yeah.
that like you're connected to from an early age, because I know that's one of your biggest like
Yeah.
passions is
Yeah. Rap.
DEI and like
Yeah.
working towards safer communities for all types of marginalized voices. And
Mhm.
it's not shocking at all to hear that like you were an X-Men kid.
No, but I think to your point, like you could even sort of extrapolate that idea out to something like Power Rangers where all, and I mean I wasn't aware of my sexuality in like really any sense when I discovered Power Rangers, but I would say there is something to, I actually wasn't planning on like making the sexual orientation connection, but more like the connection of being on the outskirts where the Power Rangers like had to have largely had to like hide their powers from the community or like be really low key about it and be these badass heroes who are like, oh yeah, I'm just at school taking math tests, that's me, like not even though I wear the same colors that I
Yeah,
fight in, like in my when it's morphin time, like it's I think that there's something yeah, the fighting piece is also interesting to me because it's not just fighting, but like fighting for a cause.
Yeah.
And I do think that there's like a sense of justice that in part was instilled in me by a lot of these shows, even if they weren't necessarily like full on trying to hit home that point. Though then again, when I think of like X-Men and Power Rangers and Captain Planet, like all of them are pretty big in terms of pushing a sense of justice in some kind of way, and I'm sure that that affected me. I would play like all of the time, like imaginary, like pretending to be, a Power Ranger. That was one of my things back in the day. So just
I
saying.
can
Yeah.
completely understand because we played Code Lyoko and Danny Phantom and Aladdin in the
Uh,
school playground, like,
mhm.
but no, now that you say that, it is interesting because, like, as someone who has also been through similar experiences of, like, figuring out that he was bi, like,
Mhm.
it's interesting to think about the shows that resonated with me and that there was, like, a lot of, like, oh, there's a secret that they're carrying, like, with it's Danny Phantom, and he's, like, half ghost, and he doesn't want anyone, like,
Yeah.
Timmy Turner has his Fairly Odd Parents, not his Power Rangers. That would be a wild crossover. Like Timmy Turner meets the Power Rangers. Let's make it
He
happen.
would not be a good Power Ranger
He
though.
would
That's
be
the
so
thing.
bad, but like then he would have
Yeah.
Cosmo and Wanda hook him up.
Oh, well, yeah.
Wanda,
Okay.
let's be real. Wanda would hook him up.
Yeah, I was gonna
Cosmo
say.
would be like accidentally giving like the trade secrets to like the bad guys.
Yeah, I mean, but it is interesting. Like, there's a lot of it is, yeah, this is what you
And the
do.
irony is that it's from like Butch Hartman, who is like a known like
Oh
more
no.
conservative person. But
Oh,
like
that's funny.
it's
Well,
like
he
it's
just
so
got caught off
interesting.
guard. He didn't
Yeah.
even know what he was doing,
Yeah.
basically.
But,
So,
like, I feel like secret identities have always been, like, something that resonated with me, maybe because I had one of my own that I
well,
was navigating the world through, and I maybe you can, like, elaborate more on
no,
this.
I mean, let me I'll widen it out because I don't want to in this specific case, I almost wouldn't even give that much credit to like sexual orientation as an identity because I think all everyone has, I wouldn't say, well, yeah, like I don't know if I'd use the phrase like secret identities, but there's this idea that like everyone wears masks. Like there are masks that folks have as they navigate the world. And whether that is like, oh, you have this really corny interest that you're not sure how other people would be, like how they'd respond. I think pro wrestling is a great example of that. As it's like, oh my god, I'm a pro wrestling fan. Or people are gonna be like, oh, that's so fake and stupid. Like,
Reality
or
television.
reality TV is a great example. And these are just summer interests, but like there's so many levels you could go to as a human where like even just like personal things where people are just like this, there's sides of us that we don't want to share with the world, right? And I think that that is a maybe that's why these shows have been so successful among so many different audiences because people could connect with that idea of like having something that you hold dear to yourself, or and then also there's just like a thrill to like secrets, like, ooh, like, but like what happens if they find out about his powers or her powers or her like origin story, like what's gonna happen? It's thrilling, it's kind of thrilling. But yeah, I mean, it's like there, I think the cool thing to our point is like there's so many levels that we could connect with these shows on, whether
Yeah.
it's like with sexual orientation, with race and identity otherwise, with just like random embarrassing interests and all. There are reasons these shows are popular.
I definitely would love to explore this further on like some sort of
Please.
podcast discussing like secret identities and queerness and like not just like queerness but like also like growing up and like seeing these types of stories and how they impact children. I feel like there's something there. But like I also want to ask, so we talked a little bit about the TV that you consumed. What was like your early movie palette? Like were you a Disney kid? Were you like a comedy kid? Were you a horror movie kid? You don't give horror movie girly, but you might
Um,
surprise me.
it's weird. I don't have a strong recollection of a lot of so here's my
And
thing.
again,
Here's
like your taste might be subjective to like your siblings making you watch stuff that they wanted to watch.
well, I mean, it's interesting because like I don't when I think about it, so I am 31 years old now. I was born in 1992. Again, back to me doxing myself. But I'm pointing this out because between 1992 and 2002, like what are the movies that probably resonated with me? Like I remember really enjoying Home Alone. So you
Ooh.
know, a little giving a little horror for sure, a little comedy, but horror. That was a scary movie in a lot of ways. If you really
Yeah,
think about it,
Marvin Harry.
Marvin Harry cannot be trusted, and
No, absolutely not.
honestly, if they walked into my place right now, I don't even have marbles to throw for them to slip on or like oil to put on the floor. But you know, it is yeah, like there's that, you know, we've talked about Harriet the
You
Spy,
love a good
which
rambunctious child.
I do love. You know what? Actually, that's a good point. I do, and I also was like I loved Spy Kids at one point, like that whole franchise. That was
Yeah.
my thing. I really uh, you know, I think it's interesting because part of me wants to go to like some of the movies that are more popular, but I don't even really know how deeply they resonated. Like Lion King, sure, like whatever. But I think if I'm being honest with myself, like I was really, and again, I don't know exactly what year the Spy Kids franchise came out as an example, but I remember loving that and being so into that, right? Again, I think there's something about like oh my gosh, Felipe, I'm having a realization, a moment here. It's like the
You love
crafty,
spies.
sneaky kids. Well, yeah, it's like
Harriet
you
the
get
Spy.
Harriet the Spy, Spy Kids, but Home Alone, you get that. I remember also watching like Inspector Gadget, but like the animated series on one of the channels, probably like the WB or something like that. So there was a lot of that, and I just liked the. You have to remember where we were at the time in terms of technology. Like the idea of a grappling hook. The idea of a grappling hook was huge. Like the idea of a watch that also had a screen on it was like huge. Like I remember buying uh with I'm sure my allowance or whatever I got. I remember buying like little spy toys that would be at like the book fairs and things. So that was my thing. And then, you know, I became a Mean Girls girly, you know, when that came
Have you seen
around.
the
That
new
was a
one
big thing. But
or no?
that was like, no, I have not seen. And I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I need to. You know what I mean? Like I've heard a lot of people who've been responded really amazingly to it, and others who have been like, don't remake my Mean Girls. Where I'm like, no one's like your Mean Girls is still your Mean Girls, but this is just different. This is a different thing
Yeah.
based on that. So it's
I
okay. So I
recommend
don't know.
watching
I'll
it
come
just to
around
watch
to
it, but you
it.
can wait until it's on streaming if you're not running
I'll
to
get
it.
to it. Honestly, I'll probably get to it in like 3 years. You know,
We love
realistically,
it.
knowing myself, probably 3 years.
Um,
I'll watch it. Yeah.
I loved it, but also I've heard a lot of people in their 20s like it more than the people in their 30s. And then I've also heard people who were not familiar with the Broadway show like it a lot more
Interesting.
people than who were. But I had a great time. It was a fun movie. If you just go in for positive vibes, you'll have fun. Great music. World Burn has been on rotation for me, as has Revenge Party. But Mean Girls is such an interesting like turning point for you because I have to assume that's like when you were in your middle school era. That's when people were being mean because that was like 2004, right? So
Yeah, I guess so.
yeah. Also one quick tangent. Did you ever watch Agent Cody Banks?
No, I didn't. I'm
No.
familiar, but
Okay.
no, I did not.
I feel like that would have been a movie you would have loved. Anyways, then
I mean, there's so much out there though. Like as we
true.
pointed out, there were so many different things. By the way, just so you could, I'm gonna just name drop a few. Actually, no, I won't do this now. But at some point, I will name drop like a few things from my. I don't really use Facebook now, but like from my Facebook history of shows,
From your
there's a
likes.
lot of
Yeah.
stuff. There's a lot of
Yeah.
stuff there too. Yeah, from like my literally there's a tab that's like more and then it's like TV shows, movies. There's a lot of stuff there that I've like liked or said that I liked that I'm like, did I really like that? But I mean, I'm seeing like Fresh Prince of Bel Air on there. again, at some point I was watching like Married with Children in syndication, but
With
that was like
Al
a more
Bundy.
adult
Yeah.
show. Yes, I was into
Yeah.
that probably around like middle school, high school. Degrassi was in there at some point.
Did you ever
Have you ever
dabble
heard
in? You
Mama's
mentioned.
Mom? Wait,
Go ahead.
what? Wait, hold on. Let me ask you. Have you ever heard of Mama's Family?
I've heard of it, but I've never seen it. Let me look at it. Look it up.
Look it
Oh my god,
up.
with Vicki Lawrence?
It's a very country show. Yeah,
This is like a
Vicki Lawrence.
1980s show. You were up on this?
Yes, in syndication. I'm telling you, I was so adult for my age.
Well, no, so
I was
in
so
Brazil,
mature.
Nick at Night would have like the original Get Smart and Bewitched series, and then also like randomly Keenan and Kel with all these 60 shows. Like it was like Keenan and Kel and
Yeah,
all these 60 shows was Nick at Night in Brazil. And I was like, I'm
yeah.
here for it. Yeah.
Hey, I'm down for it.
Um,
And yeah, I think that's like some of it. That's some of it. But yeah, I could
were
keep
you a
going.
Nick at Night kid? Is that why these shows popped up?
What? Well, Nick and Knight had different eras, of course. So yeah, I
Valid.
was at different points. But I do really feel like I transitioned into. So for me, there were certain like big transitions in terms of my love of TV, and around 2000, 2001. So I'm 9 or 10 years old. Really, I was like 8 or 9 truly when I became a pro wrestling fan, which is something
Yeah,
that
how'd you get
obviously
into it?
has stuck and influenced my life. I'll get into that. And then reality TV was also like a similarly
Yeah.
timed thing that came up around that same time. And then I shifted away from a lot of other stuff. But with pro wrestling, like for me, I was like actually a lot of people, a lot of kids at the time, I was introduced to pro wrestling through the video games. Like there were all sorts of wrestling video games that came out in the late 90s, and I was like, "Oh, this is cool." And then I remember flipping through the channels and being like, "Oh, wait, there's a show for this?" And I was so young, I didn't even like fully I like my brain had a hard time comprehending where to like watch things at the right time because we had like you had the TV Guide channel and you had like the TV Guide booklet that you might even have at home, but like I just found it again. I was like, "Oh, I really like this." And then I just started watching it. Like it was one thing that I just would like watch behind my parents' backs too cuz I'm like they probably wouldn't like this, but I was so into pro wrestling and I like it was like probably one of the times in with pro wrestling ever in pro wrestling fandom. Pro wrestling was like kind of cool at that point. So I was all in on it. I was into it.
And then did you go to school and talk about wrestling with other kids? Like, was it like the hot talk of the town?
No. No, well I had one friend who I would talk about pro wrestling with at school. And I remember one time he went to like an autograph signing or a book signing for one wrestler. I don't own the physical copy of the book, but this one wrestler, Lita, who was like a women's wrestler, women's champion, all the things, like big deal. She's a Hall of Famer, like so well world renowned, all the things. And I remember he went to this book signing and or was going, and he was like, Matt, like you should come with me and my family. And then I asked my mom, I was like, can I go? And she was like, no, like wrestling's trash. My mom hated wrestling at that point. Especially I worked on her. I did some work on her to get her to understand like
But
what
she
it
doesn't
was. I
watch,
think that
right?
she was right in a lot of ways. No, no, no. I was like the one in my family who really watched. But my dad would go on starting when I was like 12 years old or so to like take me to different shows and events. And that's something that we did a lot together throughout my childhood, going to WWE shows and like some other independent or local wrestling shows that would have like 50 people there. But it was like amazing. It was amazing.
Yeah. Now you've worked on your mom to get her to understand your love of wrestling at the very least.
Um, it was
Because that's
interesting. Like I think what her perception of wrestling, I will say, was very much rooted in like it was outdated. It wasn't like what wrestling was at the time. And wrestling has been even through a huge evolution to this point. There were just a lot of like problematic things at the
Mhm.
time. And I'm sure even still in wrestling, definitely more behind the scenes now than on screen. But like, just like any form of media at that time, like you had Jerry Springer as a thing at the time still. You had, and that's probably still on. I don't know, but you had like Howard Stern out there. Like you had that type of culture in reality TV too, and that bled into pro wrestling. But what my
Yeah.
mom really didn't like about pro wrestling was like the late 90s when it was even more adult. But I didn't even know about that. And so I kind of said to her, like, the wrestling I watch and know now is so much different than like what she perceived about
Mhm.
wrestling. And so, I at least got her to like understand it, and I kept going and embracing
Yeah.
it.
That's what I've been trying to do with my parents because they've like with reality TV, and I feel like I've had to like win them over times. Like I feel like they like probably were like, "Oh, this is just an obsession that he'll get over," and I was like, look at me like years later. Nope, it's still part of my life. Like, but so you got into wrestling first, and then I know your first season was Cook Islands. Was that your first reality television experience, or were you like an American Idol person?
Oh my god, I wouldn't even count American Idol. I was an American Idol person, but I was actually, I want to say, the first reality show that I truly remember watching was probably The Challenge. Probably The
The
Challenge. Or
challenge.
it was the Real World Road Rules Challenge on MTV, which
Was it
is
Real
is
World
kind of wild.
Hawaii?
Oh, no, it was not either. I was not, the first thing I think I saw was The Challenge, or it was maybe even Road Rules, but it wasn't Real World. Like, and it
Okay.
definitely wasn't Real World Hawaii with like Tech and Ruthie and skinny dipping. I'm very
Yeah.
familiar with that season too, but no, it was just people competing and like melting blocks of ice with their bodies.
Oh, I know exactly what you're
Yeah.
talking about. That was the first challenge clip you stumbled upon?
Yeah,
That's
I
what
think
so then
so. Something
what
like that.
how d so h then did you keep watching the challenge and then end up on Survivor? Or, like, how did you get to, like, the reality TV that we know you from,
Oh,
like Survivor and Big Brother?
yeah, so I also love the idea of you knowing me from like, reality TV. It's like very cool. I feel like I'm like on the shows. But no, my oldest sister started to watch Survivor, probably Survivor Cook Islands, and and you know what it was? I think that timing wise, she 8 years older. She got back from college and was living at home and then was watching Survivor at that time, or was watching, like, I remember watching Survivor and Big Brother with her, but then I just kept watching it. So that was the first season was Cook Islands, and I think timing wise that probably lines up with Big Brother 7 because that's the first Big Brother season I saw too. And so that's just what it was. It was just like my sister who was probably 22 at the time. So I was probably about 14. That that math adds up. Like, it was just being introduced to it and falling in love with it, and like getting hooked to it.
Yeah, I believe, yeah, you're making good points about Big Brother 7 being right there. I think that sounds right to me. Um, but yeah, because I just listened
Mm.
to you on a podcast talking about Yule. So that's like a very, very interesting season. I feel like people sleep on Cook Islands, but it has a really good cast. Like, I mean, five of the biggest names in Survivor history come from that season: Ozzy Yule, Parvati, Penner, and Candace. Cowboys on that season. How can you not love Problematic King Cowboy? um, but yeah, so
Uh,
that's like a great. I feel like
he
go ahead.
ugh, not cowboy,
Not
not
Cowboy.
cowboy,
No,
not cowboy,
the
not cowboy.
better CBS
Yeah.
reality television Cowboy. The best of them.
Oh god. Yeah, I was gonna say there are a few, and there it's some named cowboy, others just dressed as
Identifying as
cowboys.
Cowboy.
He is the best. Yes,
Yes.
yes, yes.
But yeah, so
Ugh.
like, and then like, I'm sure you've discussed this in your years of podcasting, but what specifically like hooked you? Do you know? Can you even like verbalize what it was that like galvanized you to keep watching these shows?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's again a few things. So one is all of the characters. Like with Cook Islands, I mean, it's not a surprise for me that I was into Cook Islands just with the diversity of characters and that drawing me in. And then the next season, Fiji, was also similarly diverse. So I think that that kind of hooked me at first. But then the mechanics of the show and how it worked just really caught me. And then there's also something like that's like peak puberty. Well, mid puberty times. So I'm like, oh, there's I'm sure something like low key really sexy about Survivor. And I didn't even like realize this at the time, but like that's just what it was. It's just like a bunch of people running around in like bathing suits or bikinis and all the things, which also I will say I feel like was like most of reality TV at that time.
Yeah.
So maybe that didn't jump out to me all that much. But I
But it's like
just
they're on
think
a
like
beach at
it's
least compared to like people in a house or people like
well,
in like a random
but even
mansion.
then, but I think like to that point, like for me, the thing that really got me about, yeah, I guess it just to like pause for a second at what you said, like yes, it's good that they were like they were in appropriate places to like it made sense that they were in beachwear on beaches. But I'm saying this because like as you are at that age, like middle school, early high school, getting to know yourself, not only are like is like your body obviously part of that in like just in a way of like you're trying to understand yourself, but like your identity is. And seeing people in these real like reality TV situations where you're seeing real characters, you're getting to understand how different people live and what people are like and what dynamics are. Like for me, that was always really interesting. And I think that reality TV was this spark for me to actually be like really to get really curious about people, because I was
Mhm.
like, oh my gosh, like this is how people live, what? Like, and it obviously, it was a not exactly a representative sample of our society, but I do think it really informed me as I just wrapped my head around the world. Like it was so powerful to get to see characters like Yule and Becky and Cowboy and Flicka and the Penner and Parvati and Ozzy and Flicka. Did I say Flicka already? I
You
probably
said
said
Flicka
Flicka.
twice.
Shout out to her wherever she is.
Are you obsessed with Flicka?
Hey, she deserves it. She deserves it. Not in good ways, but very fascinated. And that's the thing. I learned a lot from like about the world and about myself just by watching these shows, for better or for worse. Like ways to be, ways not to be. Oh my gosh, let me just tell you.
Go off.
Another set of shows that I dove into, and I probably would need to rely on you to like check on the timing exactly of when they came out, but like I became obsessed and I'm still obsessed with The Flavor of Love, I Love New York, Rock of Love franchise, I Love Money, Charm School, all that stuff. I fell in love with those shows. So like that was also around the similar time. I don't know what that was about, but everyone I knew was like watching a lot of those, and there was a lot of mess there. Probably also learning about the worlds in
Yeah.
certain ways through those shows. So
Physical
yeah,
mess too. Pumpkin spit on New York.
she really did. And I wonder if that was CGI. I don't know. I don't know. But she
The
definitely
world
did
may
spit.
never know.
They might
Yeah.
have enhanced it a little, Who knows?
Yeah. For television
Mhm.
purposes, the camera sees differently than the human eyes
Mhm.
do. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. It's
But yeah,
gross.
so like it's interesting that you start like falling in love with these programs that are people love to dunk on them for being fake, quote unquote. They're also like heightened melodrama with like people like there's like it's so interesting that this is like at a time when life starts to get more dramatic with middle school and high school. It's definitely interesting that like that's when these programs click for you, because like for me, like I was also early high school or late middle school when I got into reality television, so it's so fascinating um that
Yeah.
I feel like it's definitely a moment in time. Like I feel like that's when a lot of my friends got into it as well.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
do you have any favorite besides the ones that you mentioned, any standout like memories of watching reality television in this era besides like Cook Islands, the Love franchise, any other like random like one-off series or like seasons of shows that you remember deeply being attached to?
Hmm. That's a great question. And, for me, I think that I don't know if there were certain seasons that jumped out, or jump out in retrospect, because all of it was so eye-opening and new to me. Like, again, we didn't really have social media in the same way
Mhm.
that we do now, but even then, I remember being on MySpace, and like the cool thing about that was that all the really stars, so that was a thing also. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Like I love New York. New York, Tiffany Pollard, the one and only, the HBIC New York was always an inspiration for me. So I'll give you that. But I don't know if there were specific seasons of things. Again, everything was sort of mind blowing. Like I think I was just so innocent at the time that I was
Yeah.
just at reality TV was an education for me for sure.
It wasn't like Arthur and Power Rangers in the same way. It was not educational like that.
No, I got that education. Arthur
Yeah.
did really great work, but back in the day, and shout out to Arthur wherever he is now. I miss that guy. Uh,
Yeah.
but no,
Speaking of
like I
Arthur,
just
oh, go ahead.
please, please, what about Arthur? No,
Well, so
please, what about Arthur?
Arthur loves the library and the library card. I want to ask because I feel like, what is your relationship with like written media? Like, are you a big reader? Were you a big book kid? You have a bookshelf behind you
I
that's very
was not.
sexy.
I've read those books. I have read those books. And I know now I'm more of like an audible books person than anything, just like listening to books and taking them in that way most for the most part. But especially when it's the authors reading them, I was not a huge reader as a kid. Like we were just assigned all sorts of reading. There'd be like reading contests. I would read for that, but it never was like that. I was never that excited by it. There were certain series I'm sure that I read, but like there was a spy series of I want to call it like Alex Rider. Maybe that was in my
I
spy
remember
phase,
Alex
but
Rider. Oh my God. Point Break on the
I
mountain, on the
don't
ski
even
mountain.
I barely remember it though. I barely remember it.
They
And
had a movie.
I really I wasn't a huge book person, I think, because there was just so much assigned reading that like for me that was often like check, like okay, Catcher in the Rye, got it, bam, did it. And I think I found myself like enjoying a lot of the things that I was assigned to read in school, but um, yeah, I wasn't a huge bookworm as a child. And you know what? Let me tell you something, Felipe. Part of that was that I remember one time I lost a library book after going to the library, and I was afraid to go back
Show your
because I
face.
was like, I was like, how much are they going to charge me for never returning this book? And I never got charged. So got away with murder there.
Yeah.
But I
I'm
still
glad you
haven't
didn't
been
get
back to that
charged,
library. No, I haven't
but
been back to
libraries
that
are
library.
fun. You gotta try a library again.
I think
You
I
gotta do
think
some exposure therapy.
they did shut. Yeah, I no, I love libraries. I have a library card now. I love going to them nowadays here in
Do you follow
DC. But
Michael on
no,
TikTok? Michael, the
no,
library
and
guy?
I don't know if we. Yeah, no, I don't. And I think you were mentioning Michael, the library guy, to me, but I do not follow him on
Brent
TikTok
Brent
yet.
Showerman got me into Michael the library guy. And he's great. He's like very pro public libraries as he should be. I feel like I love a good library. I also feel more productive in a library. So sometimes I'll take my work to the library to like
Ooh.
do stuff there, like on their computers. But I love a library card. Um, did you ever read the book series about the mice that were spies or no?
No, I
They
don't
were
think I
all
was
like
into. I was not into spies too much, Felipe. I was just into spies at the level that like all kids were at that point. I swear it was a thing. Everyone was into them, but I didn't catch the mice who were spies.
Spy Mice is the book series, and there's 3
Creative.
books. And each of them are like named after the cheese from their country. So like the German cheese is
Girl.
like Gorgonzola, or the German mouse is Gorgonzola. The French mouse is Brie.
Cancel it. Cancel it.
Cancel it. Why?
I feel like this was not made by people who were representative of these identities. And they were just going for the stereotypes of call me out, cancel me for this. But I feel like they might have just been going for the stereotypes from each country.
I'm
This is what I'm
dying.
hearing.
I'm weak.
I'm not familiar, though, with the spy mice, or I don't remember
They're
them.
literally mice.
Hey.
I love it. What about music? What was your music intake
Oh
growing
my
up like?
gosh. My music intake. Still, I mean, not sadly, but just like pop, I'm a big
I
pop.
love pop. Don't be embarrassed.
No, I'm
Scream from
not.
the rooftop.
I'm not embarrassed. And it's, well, pop. And then also like, what's it even called? What am I going like? At different phases, you have different music you really listen to. So pop, I was always listening to,
Pop
but then
R&B.
you get like the emo music, like at the
Mm.
Good Charlotte, Simple Plan, My Chemical Romance. That was huge for me in middle school. I was rocking out, hardcore. I was ready to.
Paramore.
Yeah. Oh, well, Paramore, I have to say, I feel like Paramore was like a little bit later, like high
Valid.
school,
That's maybe my
but I
era.
love, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for you youth. But I will say there's a game that I play. I have an Amazon, like not even just an Amazon Alexa, but like this Amazon Echo. I have to be careful because I don't want to
She
trigger
be
it.
listening.
I
She be
know. I think I just said it and then it lit up. But there's this game called Song Quiz on there that I'll play from time to time, and it'll ask you what category you want to, and I'll say like 2000s, whatever, and I could get every single song. Like no joke, I don't play. Because I was so immersed, and I was like an MTV TRL Total Request Live girly back when it was Carson Daly still on there, and I would watch that getting home from school. It is really interesting how like with so many shows, it's either okay, I was watching it before school, getting ready for school in the morning or whatever, or I was watching it right after school, and then there's like late night and all that stuff, whatever. But yeah, I would watch TRL and just like consume whatever pop media that the system was trying to throw at me.
You
I was
loved
also
MTV in the day.
I did with the challenge and all. I will also say now that I think about it, and I don't know if I should say this legally, but hopefully I don't get, you could edit this out if I get arrested. But
I think it'll be
Napster
too late by that.
Napster and LimeWire, I was all over those, downloading all, I mean, I was like not 8 or 9. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was downloading all sorts of free music. And then I was paying for music on iTunes for 99 cents each. For
I was doing
I'm
that
sure
too.
I spent hundreds of dollars on songs, and I hope I still own them somewhere.
I hope you do too. No, but I feel like that was like I wasn't a big Napster LimeWire person, but I was a big like bootleg watch when I was getting in Survivor. I used this like sketchy website probably called Tube Plus.
Oh,
Like that like had all
oh,
these like ads that probably gave my computer
viruses.
viruses. Yeah. But
Mhm.
like that's how I got into Survivor. That's how I watched old seasons. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was like the Napster of our generation.
Ugh, God. You know what though? Like it was, I'm telling you, Felipe, like at my big age, I was so, look, we had so many changes in technology. Like I remember being in kindergarten and sitting in front of a big computer that probably weighed about 150 pounds, and it rather than our little laptops that we have. And I remember sitting in front of Mavis Beacon teaching me typing, and I would learn from her how to learn to type. And then
Oh my god, those
social
typing
media
games. We
was
got to talk
invented.
about that later.
I remember when social media was invented. I remember, I don't know, most people don't know Zenga, most people don't know all sorts of things. So I am
Yeah,
like,
Messenger.
yeah, it was like a lot. There was a lot of different things out there. But I'm just saying, like, it does, I feel so lucky being this age and where we are generationally, because we were able to see things like before smartphones, before iPods, before iPads, and yet we're still able to be part of that evolution. And I don't know how to use TikTok quite yet, but I don't think I'm too old to figure it out.
So you mentioned that you were like, you loved that you grew up in a time where we didn't have smartphones to where we are now, that like we had to like kind of fend for ourselves in the early days of the internet with like the iPads and the MySpace. Did you ever have an iPod Touch?
And I just know the normal iPod. No, I don't think I had an iPod Touch. I
It
had
was
a
basically an
little.
iPhone without the phone.
Okay, the iPhone. Yeah, no, I definitely had one of those. I don't
Yeah.
even know why I just think of it as an iPod, but yeah, I had one of those. Actually,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I still have it somewhere.
I know I have mine. It just doesn't work because I was a dum dum and forgot to take it out of my pants one time and it went in the wash.
Well, I was gonna say I feel like a lot of the technology like that just like doesn't work because it wasn't
Old.
made to work for 20 plus years or whatever it might
Yeah.
be.
But like, do you like the fact that you grew up in this? I mean, it's the only life you have, so I'm sure you have to like make the best of it, regardless if you actually like it or not. But like the fact that you got to like experience like a little bit of life that in a little bit more analog versus the digital. Like I love the fact that
Mhm.
know how to tape something on a VCR for whatever reason that ever is a skill that is required. Because that's how I used to record episodes of Jimmy Neutron. We didn't have Paramount
Um,
Plus that would drop it at midnight the next
no.
day at the time.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, yes, it is the life that I've lived, so, like, I only know this life, but I'll also say that I think that the power of, like, experiencing, analog and digital, experiencing putting in tapes and recording on VCRs, or even just, like, the frustration of going from, like, a from a VHS to a DVD, and then they tried to make Blu-ray a thing, and I was like, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. Like it was a learning experience. It helps you appreciate the different media. Like I know that we only really experienced the tail end of VHS, but like that was still I think interesting for us to understand and have like some of the nostalgia of moments where like here and there when the like VHS might break, and then like the wound up film inside of it would mess up, and then you just don't have a movie anymore, or like having a DVD and it gets scratched and then it just messes up things, or whatever it might be. Like that's something I always will appreciate, just to appreciate how good things are now, how seamless things are now. Like we could literally watch anything right now. We don't even need to stop and like look up when it's airing. We could just watch it now, or we could
Yeah.
watch clips of it now. Like it's not that hard, and it helps to appreciate those things, because those were our biggest struggles at one point in our lives. Like how could I watch wrestling if I don't even know when it's on, and then I watch it when it's on and I'm like, crap, like okay, now I have to wait until the next week to watch it. I can't even watch YouTube because that didn't exist.
Yeah.
So I mean, it just the appreciation for what we have, I think, is like the best gift that our generation and our age range has gotten with all of this. Because it wasn't always this easy, people,
And I think
kids.
that actually is a part of the reason of the media that shaped me is that you had what you had, and that's why I watched so many Nickelodeon and Disney Channel and Cartoon Network shows on weekends, because like we didn't have other stuff, and like I watched stuff that I wasn't the biggest fan of. Like I watched a lot of Ed, Ed and Eddie, and I liked it enough, but it wasn't like my jam. Like if I would could have watched Teen Titans on loop or SpongeBob on loop, I would much rather done that. But like it's the
Mhm.
familiarity that I have with like the whole era of that Nickelodeon, Disney Channel, Cartoon Network for me, and you probably have the same thing with your version of it. of whatever,
Well,
like Rugrats, Hey Arnold, whatever was airing at the
we
time.
didn't even talk about that. Oh my god, I was a Rugrats and Hey Arnold
Who was
stan.
your
Like
favorite Rugrat?
Rugrat? Oh, easy, Tommy.
Tommy? I was
Why
gonna
didn't
say,
you
I
couldn't
thought
guess
you were
that?
gonna say Angelica Pickles because she is the moment, but
No, she was nasty.
she
She
was
was really
nasty.
nasty.
Cynthia gave me the heebie-jeebies.
In retrospect, more than anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
But,
Cynthia's cute. She's cute.
um,
The
I
doll,
have
by the
some
way, in
friends
case
that
folks
are,
are
yeah.
wondering.
I have 2 people that I know, and they give me such Phil and Lil vibes. The way they talk to each other, they're, like, close, and I'm
Are
just
they
like, "Oh."
twins?
No, they're not even related.
Wow.
They're just
That's a
really
big
close and really good friends, and they, like, were yelling at each other in the break room one time, and I was like, "You're such Phil and Lil."
No, I was always a I was a big Tommy fan. I resonate with Arnold a lot and Hey Arnold,
Did you see the new
which by the
Paramount Plus
way,
commercial with Arnold and Jeff Probst?
I definitely saw a commercial with
It's a
Jeff. I
Paramount
mean,
Mountain one with Jean-Luc
Paramount Mount
Picard.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen like all
And they
these different
throw Hey
Paramount Mountain
Arnold
commercials.
up to the mountain.
I don't like
They
this. That's
I don't
so
like it
wrong.
either. They're like,
That was
"Football
never
head, we're
part of
gonna
his
throw you like a
character.
football."
That's actually bullying, and that's not okay.
Jeff
And
Probst was
Jeff
a
Probst
bully in
should
that moment.
apologize,
Yeah.
and in others too. But like when Austin decided to quit, when most quits happen, that's a whole other thing.
I
Jeff,
was
I'm
like,
sorry.
"Austin didn't qu," and I was like, "Oh, wait." I was, like, thinking of Austin from last season, my
Oh
king.
no, no, your king did not quit. But no, I mean, it's like it's fascinating because to your point about like the time, our point about really the timing of things. Like I think part of the reason why we have so many different shows we've been exposed to is just because you really had to watch what was on, and you could flip through the channels and you could get to like the WB and the Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon and Disney, and at any point in time, you had like, let's say, those four options of what to watch. Because, or if with me, like MTV, VH1, like BET, like all these other things where you only had options that were in front of you, and so that just widened our horizon of things. Now, like I think of my 5-year-old nephew, and he watches everything on like YouTube basically, or
Yeah.
YouTube TV, where or even like if there are other ways of watching, like everything is streaming, everything's a choice. And I would bet if you have this conversation with him in 30 years, that he's not going to have the same like diversity and range of shows as us. That's just my guess, because there are our faves, but the thing is we also had to be exposed to shows that
Exactly.
weren't only our faves. Not to sound like such a boomer, but like
But no,
I
you
guess
make a
it
good
comes from
point.
a
What was
yeah.
that show you mentioned earlier? The one from the 80s?
Oh, Mama's Family?
Yeah, you wouldn't have watched that and if you were growing up now.
No, or even like Married with Children I wouldn't have
Yeah.
watched. Like there's Saved by the Bell I wouldn't have watched
You
because
get what you get and
syndication
you don't
isn't
get
as much
upset
of
was
a
very much how we had to live.
It was, but it was also really fulfilling because, we found love for these shows,
Yeah.
even if we didn't know that we initially loved them. Like that's one thing I really appreciate about the media that made me, because I just feel like it's there's so much that you could appreciate and enjoy, and it's to the point where it does make it a little tough to sort through what am I like a huge fan of, what am I kind of fan of. But at the end of the day, it doesn't even matter, because all of it influences us, and all of it kind of contributed to how we saw the world at the time, and probably contributes to how we see the world now.
Indeed, indeed. It's so interesting that you say like that, because I have really recently come to appreciate the fact that no one is gonna watch the same exact number of shows that I have, same exact episodes, and like everyone's experience with media is gonna be uniquely theirs. Like there's things that you've seen that I will never watch. There's things that I've
Hmm.
seen that you will never watch, and like even though we're very good friends and our interests overlap a ton, like my experience with the media I've consumed is so personal. And it's so interesting that you said that. As I was like literally thinking about that earlier this week and being like, it's so weird that like you can have someone who has like 98% of the same taste as you, but there's still going to be things that they've never seen that you love. Um,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah, yeah,
go.
I know, I think that's a solid point. There's not really much to say to that, but, uh, yeah, I mean, that's life. Like,
It is life.
I mean, I think that's also something that not to be well, I guess this is already going to, like, a kind of deep philosophical place, but, this is like the beauty of it. Like we don't need to be the same to get
Yeah,
along. Because I would even say that between the stuff that we've watched and really resonated with, like the percentage might be pretty low, and yet in terms of like the number of shows or properties or franchises, and yet we could still bond over those things. Like even if we
yeah,
only watch like 10% of the same things, which would be shocking, but mainly because like you watch so much TV like that I'm sure I don't watch, and you've watched so
yeah.
much that I'm sure I haven't watched, that like yeah, we could be different
And
and
then
get along.
it's also like, so I kind of want to push this into
Please.
like intersectional identities, but like it's
Uh-huh.
also kind of learning about who you are. Like for me, I've probably watched more Latino content than you have, and you've probably watched more Black content than I have. But like I still have appreciation for every type of content because for me, like I often growing up used television as a way to learn about different people. Um,
Mhm.
and so, like, what is your experience with like Black media, and then also with queer media, and then if there's intersectional examples that you love? Uh, I would love to like explore identity topics at this point in time in the media that shaped your identity.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just laughing because it's really tough when I think back about the representation. Like my mind immediately with Black media, like because I just mentioned it earlier, but it went to like the Of Love franchises, which I'm like, yeah,
I thought
that's
you were gonna
not.
say Bill Cosby, and I was like, that's also
Well,
problematic.
actually, the Cosby Show was definitely like one of the things I remember watching growing up. I mentioned Little Bill, like the childhood version of that. I loved. There was I I think, like, I definitely didn't watch Fat Albert, I don't think I really did,
I
but
saw the movie. I
there
didn't
was
watch
some sh
the.
no, not like what you mean with Keenan Thompson,
Yeah, I saw that
right?
movie. We watched it in like third grade recess when it was raining one time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like, there were a lot of shows out there, but I think that beyond like the pockets that we had, because even on like when I just looked at my Facebook, I'm like, oh Matt, you used to watch like the Parkers, which had Monique in it, and like there's so many shows that had Black representation in pockets. Like they weren't the award-winning shows or anything like that, but I guess that as I became a reality TV person for mainstream reality TV, like that's where I really started to feel the lack of representation in particular. Because sure, like BET could exist, and we could get that Black content through Black entertainment television, amazing. But why can't I be represented on Survivor? Why can't I be represented on Big Brother? Why can't I be represented on the challenge? Why can't I be represented? Like that's the thing that I always thought was interesting, was looking at these reality shows, and you would have, believe it or not, like one queer person on so many seasons, if any. And they would usually be like voted out or eliminated first because whatever
I don't
microaggressions
believe
and
there's
all.
ever been an openly bisexual man on American Survivor.
Is that true?
I think that's true. I know that Turner was there for Big Brother
What do you
last year.
mean? How's that true?
I don't think there has ever been, at least like while at the time of the show being on, their season
No.
being on.
Well, yeah, Ozzy, I guess after, but yeah, I think that's shocking, and that's just to the point. Like we haven't had that representation so often. So for me, when I think about queer identities, there are a lot more shows that represent us, but then it's still the story of like tragedy and trauma at times. And I think of so many shows that come to mind. Like one show that I really do enjoy that I talk about that doesn't really represent me, but does speak a lot to my experiences, like going to an all boys school in high school and like being queer is Heartstopper, which me and
I
Grace
was literally
Leader
like writing
cover,
down. I was like, is it Heartstopper?
which me and Grace Leader cover, but
Love
then
it.
like that is also not representing all of my identities. And I do talk about how I wish that Heartstopper would. I mean, I think it's a good. It's great for what it is. It's great for what it is. But if it were an American show, like I would just hope that that version would have more people of color and storylines that dive into it. And they do have people of color on the show. I also just wish the stories would dive into their stories more. But I don't expect that to come from the show, which
The show is
is
a little too saccharine for me to like absolutely
yeah,
like. Really enjoy the show. I really love it. I like cried multiple times watching it, but it's a little so
sure.
saccharine that I feel like it's not relatable for me all the
Mm,
time because it's like a
hmm.
little too sweet and innocent, and I feel like not
Yeah.
gritty enough. But like that's also the point of the show, and I hope that it
Uh,
allows for forward momentum for more shows of its kind to be able to push a little deeper.
yeah, and I would also say that I think that the show is a good like it provides a good place of conversation for people who are a bit older
Yeah.
to reflect on our experiences and how they compare. Like, wow, I wish I had that. I wish that I would have known to speak up against homophobia in that way, but
But it hopefully influences the next generation, which is like what
exactly.
it's for. And
That's what I
I'm
always
glad that there
say.
are kids who are in my position, even though I'm an adult now and can't appreciate it. I hope there are kids that need this, that see it, that like
Mhm.
feel representative of what their experiences are.
Totally,
And I
100%.
like I will keep watching the show and keep writing for the show and keep like highlighting the show because it's so important. Like Nick Nelson is one of the first bi men that I've ever seen on television. And
Ugh,
I will always be appreciative of that, even though it took
yeah.
until I was 24 till I saw it.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's been a minute. But I would also say that there are a lot of great shows in pockets. There's a lot of great representation in pockets. Unfortunately, we do also see a lot of these different shows and series canceled or voices canceled by networks like
Oh,
the
trust me, as a
HBOs,
Latino,
the
I know.
Maxes. Especially like on the there's so many like as I say on the scripted side, but also unscripted, and it's rough. It's rough. Like it is kind of sad to still be really wanting and looking for that full on representation, which is why I think it's so beautiful when you have a season of reality TV where like Jam Jam could be on Survivor and shining and like representing in so many ways, or where we could have like the first all queer, all openly queer tribe on Survivor with Carolyn and Jam Jam and Josh, and like have a season just that same season I believe was like the most queer people on a season, most openly queer people on a season of Survivor. So we're still fighting for the representation. I think part of it too that is so abundantly clear is that there are so many examples that just aren't representative of our communities and intersectional identities that it shows that there are a lot of people who still don't get it, and we need them to get it to
Mhm.
understand. Not because every story needs to have me in it or people like me in it and represent me, but just because it's really sad that the so many of those that win awards. And okay, I get it. RuPaul's won the Emmys like every single year for the past like 7 years or whatever it is, Great. Love you, Ru. But like we need to do more and do better, and I think that Hollywood needs to be confronted with the lacks of diversity and representation rather than like maybe looking at something like Drag Race and being like, but RuPaul did it, like what, we're not racist or
I have
homophobic, like
such complicated feelings on like Rue winning the Emmy because I'm like,
me
on one hand,
too.
I'm like, absolutely, Rue deserves for like being the trailblazer that RuPaul is, having queer people of color on and behind cameras
Sure.
is so important.
I
But it's
love
also
that
like
show.
Survivor's the better show. I was like,
Well, okay, I won't even say all that,
I'll
but
say Survivor.
I'm just saying I think it's a little strange to give the award to the same person all the time. So,
Yeah.
there we go.
Hopefully, if Survivor 45 loses next year, I'm gonna be so crying. I'm gonna be so sad. And I'm gonna be crying. But
Yeah, no,
I said I was so crying. I'm like, what is that supposed to
so much crying. You'll be so much
be?
crying.
It's that emoji with the tears streaming down your face.
Yeah, a lot of cries. And
Yeah,
honestly, it's like it is cool though. Isn't it awesome like
yeah.
that reality
Well,
TV can give us some of that representation, and then we could go deeper with these characters because they're real people and be like, "Oh,
yeah.
wow, you're even cooler than the show felt comfortable representing."
For sure. And
What?
also, like, at least with scripted, a lot of the times that you see representation has to be backed by a white person in power. Like, I was a
Mm,
big Gleek, right? I'm gonna own
yeah.
my toxic trait. I'm a huge Gleek. I have very complicated feelings on Ryan Murphy, and
Uh-huh.
I know I can recognize that the reason that we got so much good representation on Glee was because he pushed for it as a white ally. But I also think he's kind of toxic. But
ASMR.
yeah, but
But
were
yeah,
you a Gleek, Matt?
no,
No,
no, I
protect your
wasn't.
peace.
Ah.
I love it. I love it from the bottom of my heart. But if you're gonna watch it, watch seasons 1 to 3. The other seasons don't matter, and you get to know the best
Mm.
character on television, Santana Lopez.
No, I think I'm probably good though because one, I think that the thing that would throw me off about the show and watching it now, and I've seen episodes obviously, and obviously I've seen even more clips of songs and performances, and you have even heard more clips of the performances of songs. That I think it would throw me off that so many of the well, all of the songs, I guess, are dated at this point. But I mean, they're still amazing, I'm sure. But you know what? There's like too much really great TV to catch up on. No offense. I know. Oh no, I'm gonna get canceled. I'm gonna get yelled at. I don't want to get yelled at by
Don't
all the Glee
cancel Matt
podcasts and
Scott.
episodes.
If you're
I
gonna
know.
cancel Matt Scott, his Twitter is at Chappelle's_show.
Yes, that's exactly my Twitter. No, I'm just like even thinking of like Matt Lagori and folks who like love Glee and talk about it, and I'm like, and Iman, and I get it. I get it. I'm thinking of like the Choir Room podcast, by the
I know.
way, when it comes to Glee. I just have to shout it out. But the yeah, I mean not for me. There's so much out there. And that's like another thing. Like again, we're in a streaming world. There's so much to catch up on. I haven't even watched like all of Abbott Elementary. I'm like I watched like I'm pretty good on it. I'm like I've watched maybe like half of all of Abbott Elementary at this point. But then like looking at that, I'm like, okay, let me catch up on that. Like, could we just shut down? Never mind. I don't want to ask for another strike or anything like that. But I was about to say, can we just shut down all TV releases so that I can catch up over the next 5 years and then keep going? Like,
What you're
that's
saying
all I'm
is you
saying.
want more shows to not get renewed, but it's gonna be the people of color shows that get axed when you say that. Watch what you
Oh
wish
no,
for.
I didn't say
It's
that. You
very
just said
monkey's
that.
paw.
You said that. You said that. And we're
I'm
gonna
putting
have
words in your
and
mouth.
those are the shows that I want to keep around
Yeah.
mostly. But even
Uh,
then, I'm like, I can't catch up. So
I got one more topic in my little notes.
oh no, not only one
It's
more.
well, I do believe you have a time crunch.
Look, I could just look, we could keep going. Like if you have
Okay.
two more
Well, I could
topics.
talk about more. I just like had was one more that I was like, okay, this is a must hit. Um, you mentioned it, but like you do a lot of journalism and documentary filmmaking and interviewing of like people in the climate change space in uh regards to people of color in these spaces. Like,
Yeah.
were you always someone who was like
No.
involved in these circles? Like, how did you get involved with that? That's like
No.
media connected, but like, yeah, and what led you to this realm of your life?
Oh my gosh. It's such a long conversation, but I'll go there. So, no, I haven't always been a climate person, and that's part of my story. And I do share this very often. Like it is kind of funny, I'll say as a side note. Some people say to me like, "Matt Scott, like you are on Pod Friends interviewing people." This is like within the, within these communities, and they'll say to me, "Someone needs to interview you." And I'm like, "Well,
Well, that's what
you
we're
know,
doing here.
I know, and I'm like, this is great. Like, but I have been interviewed by people, not only like in this world. Actually, I don't even know if I really have been in this world interviewed as much, but like outside of it, in the climate world, I have, or as it relates to my story. So I'll share. So you know, where do I start? I guess there's a lot that you kind of heard about the media that's made me to who I am, and I talked about Captain Planet and Power Rangers and X-Men and all those things. But I think a lot of that contributed to me being someone who's always passionate about social justice. My parents absolutely contributed to that, and I going into college, graduating from college, um, I had a degree in business focused in marketing, and I really wanted to use it to focus on social issues. Like, I always knew I wanted to use my power to do something about social issues. And I like 2016 to 2020 especially, I found myself working in on so many projects in so many spaces where I was like in the rooms with so many of like the people who we look to change systems and change our world. Like, I was doing work with a lot of work with NASA. I was doing work at one point with the Obama White House, with with like these smaller projects that I wasn't super involved in, but like with Nike, with Walmart, with like the US Agency for International Development, the Australian government. Like, there were all of these other folks, and I found time and time again that I was often like the only one of me in the room. And I found that the representation wasn't there, and that it could also be like a really lonely, isolating place, because a lot of us don't see ourselves represented. You just see a lot of like older white people, mostly older white men who are represented. And so, you know, I in 2017 started to interview people, and the long and short of it is like, part of me was wanting to provide the representation that I knew I needed and that others needed to see. This was after Trump's election. A lot of people felt really powerless, so I really want to highlight stories of people who are making a positive difference. But what actually drove me into interviewing in particular was when my dad passed away in 2017, because he had just this incredible life story, this incredible piece of Black history tying with Black History Month. And I found, like, as he passed away, I'm like, stories like his often don't get told. He grew up in this place called Prince Edward County, Virginia, where, like, long story short, like, due to segregation, they closed the public schools to Black students primarily. And what that led to is a lot of people struggling, and not finishing their education. My dad was not only lucky, but moved away from home, had a great story, was able to like really make an impact in the world and be a hero of mine. But that those stories weren't told, and I really felt like, wow, like, if I could be out here getting people to share their stories, like, that's actually going to make a difference, because everyone's story has power. So that flashes forward to what I do now in the climate world. I'd been interviewing tons of people, dozens and dozens of people for years, through a project I had called like 180 degrees of impact at first, and then I called it Let's Care. And then I just said, let me focus on climate, because climate stuff relates to like everything. Like, everything ties in with climate change. Every industry relates to climate change in some kind of way. And so I said, okay, let me highlight like voices that often go unheard, stories that often go unheard in climate. And that's what led to what I do now. And it's much needed, because
Yeah.
representation is a huge problem when it comes to climate, and a lot of people, of Black and brown people, people of color, indigenous people, Black people, like, don't have our voices and stories told. But
No, and
hey,
you're
that's what I'm
doing
trying
important
to
work.
do.
And first of all, thank you for sharing a little
No,
bit more
thank you.
about your dad's life, because
Totally.
I know you talk about him a
Yeah.
lot, and I know pieces of his story, but I didn't know that one.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you
Yeah.
sharing that, and like giving love to your dad and telling his story.
Yeah.
And also, like, it's kind of like the work that you're doing with Pod Friends. Like, you're giving these people the platform to share their story and hear
Hmm.
and be able to reach individuals that might not have otherwise identified with this. Like, again, we go back to the Mike Bloom interview, but like that was so resonant to a lot of people for a reason, because like a lot of people struggle with anxiety, depression, myself included. And just like when
Yeah.
that episode came out, I remember listening to it, and then I messaged Mike and I was like, thank you so much for like being
Mhm.
vulnerable, because it's scary and it's hard, but like it matters to people to see that we're not alone. And that's representation matters in mental health spaces too.
Yeah,
And that's
100%.
how like I'm loving that you like every like you have always a diverse roster of guests every season, so that like you
Uh,
have people. What are you gonna say, Matt?
I was gonna say I do my best, and honestly, if I'll be completely real about it, like I it would be even more diverse. It would be even more diverse if I could make it more diverse, and
Yeah.
I'll just say that.
No, and that's I just appreciate the diversity in the guests that you pick, because it's like, okay, well, I might not have a lot in common. I'm just going to use your latest example, and that's actually a bad example for me because I have a lot in common with Owen. But
Oh,
like if
yeah.
like an episode with Owen,
Uh-huh.
like you could find some random white lady in Norway who might have a lot of the same story that Owen has for
She's
some.
listening.
She's
She is
listening.
listening.
Yeah,
And
let's
that's
call her
by the way,
Helga.
I'll
Helga.
say I'll say yeah, like yes, there is so much diversity in the stories and ways that we don't always
But there's also
appreciate. Like
commonality.
and commonality. Like I will say, like these podcasting spaces, they were so white for so long. And but even like so part of what I'm saying is like from a race perspective, and I want more people to be represented in these spaces, not only for the sake of the content that we make, but because then like I just want more badass people and stories who I'm allowed to feature
Yeah.
on Pod Friends and on my in the platforms that I have. But at the same time, there is a lot of diversity when it comes to just like so many different things in people's stories. And I think
Yeah.
one thing that Pod Friends has really helped me appreciate is like just reminded me of, I should say, is the levels of diversity where like I have a couple of interesting Pod Friends episodes coming out. One with the one and only Jacob Jones, which is a very different conversation. And I please subscribe to Pod Friends. I know we're not doing plugs yet, but subscribe to Pod Friends, robhiswebsite.com/Pod Friends feed, wherever you get your podcasts. But Jacob Jones is a very different
Oh,
conversation than
wild man.
my
I'm so excited.
well, it's very fascinating because we talk about that, and it's a very different conversation than my interview that I also just did. I just did one with Jacob and one with Franny Marin from Survivor 44, and very different conversations, very different me showing up on them, very different energies to them, and I just love that people never cease to surprise me
Mhm.
with like how they show up on the Pod Friends podcast.
That's
But
also
Jacob's episode, I will say, is you'll be like, Matt,
okay.
you're wild. What are you
Yeah.
doing?
No, but like just to go back to my example of Helga from
Please,
Norway, like she can find
Helga,
commonalities. I'm just making this character up, but she can find
love
commonalities
her.
between all three of these people that we mentioned, Owen, Jacob, and Franny. And that is regardless of their backgrounds and their lives, but there will be something that she can connect to. That's like as a Latino bisexual man connecting with like Mike Bloom, a straight white man, but like we have our shared experiences with anxiety and depression and like our
100%.
reality TV fandom. And there's like so much. And I feel like that's something that at least I've always appreciated about these reality TV spaces, both like on the shows and off. Like I will always go back to the early days of reality television with Richard and Rudy and Kent and Bunky. And like certain men came into these experiences with like prejudices and like fear of
Yeah.
gay, and then they come out of these experiences having a newfound respect for the individual and
Hmm.
being like, oh, gay people are just people I don't know. Like they get to know them because of these forced environments. And I feel like the accessibility that you have with Pod Friends and that like the internet community has, I feel like is creating a more kinder world, at the same time also showing that there are people that are Looney Tunes that are hateful and vile and horrible. and they're still out there and we have to deal with them, but
Yeah.
it also like allows accessibility for us to understand who we are and our identities better. And I think Pod Friends is, I maintain, one of the best things that RHAP has ever put out there, and I hope you are proud of what you have created.
Yeah, I'm so bad at that at times,
Well, I'm
like
proud of
that.
you for you then.
Well, no, well, no, no, no. I'm gonna just say thank you. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate that. And it is I am so thankful to know how meaningful Pod Friends has been to people, Pod Friends in particular. But then I also think of the Pride Has Spoken and
Again,
how
great
meaningful that is to
series.
people.
Shout out to
And
Grace and Evie also.
yes, shout out to them. And I would also say I'm so proud of even what I got to do a few years ago on RHAP, Black
Black
Voices of
Voices.
RHAP.
And
And
I
so,
hope, I know
oh,
I feel
please,
like I've told you this privately, but
I'm
you
sure.
inspired me to then go do the Latino voices of RHAP.
And I think it was probably I'm blanking on who fully, but I wouldn't say it was Kevin.
Kevin and Sasha,
Kevin McLean,
maybe, for
Kevin and
the Asian
Sasha.
voices.
I don't know if there's someone else with them, but I
I
want to
think
say
it was
maybe it was
just
Kevin
them.
and Sasha. Yeah, they did like an audio only podcast with Asian voices where I was already thinking about doing something around Black representation, and they did their podcast, which was audio only, and then I'm like, let's do this, like multiple panels, like all the Black podcasters who we could possibly get on, and even had like video messages from people. And so I mentioned that because this what you're saying to me is something I've heard a lot from people, that you know everyone has their strengths and their place and what they do, and I'm just always, I think, will take solace, and especially with time, I think I'll appreciate how meaningful like any of those podcasts could be to someone. Like I met some people when we were in New Orleans recently for a live event.
So fun.
I met two moms who they were talking to me, and Beth Dixon actually also on RHAP, about just what our voices mean on the network. But they were specifically saying to me like, "Oh, I've been listening to the Pride Has Spoken podcast and have been have been learning about like queer experiences." Or and they were like diving into that. And then Beth also had like a Pod Friends episode about like being ace and aromantic and things like that. And so this one mom who was staying there was telling us about like listening to those, and mentioned like that she was so thankful to that because recently she found that her kid was trans, and that helped her better understand and better support and all of that. And then the other mom who's staying right next to her is like, "Oh my god, I didn't know you have a trans kid. I also have a trans kid." And it was like this moment where it's like, this is what I care about doing. This is why I'm here. Like, sure, take the laughs, take the joy. Joy is very important, but also just like if I could help people's lives be a little bit better through like the podcasting and the media that I'm making, then like awesome. I'm so thankful for that,
And
you know?
to continue giving you your flowers, and also like I'll highlight Mike again and Latanya,
Please.
like in certain individuals
They
that like
deserve
are
it.
really good at balancing like everything that you need when you're. Shannon Gus is another one who I think is
I
tremendous at
love
this.
Shannon.
Like I listen to you all and I can uproariously laugh, but
Hmm.
also like empathize with your stories because I feel like there's commonality and you're vulnerable enough that you're willing to share this with the listeners. And like it's showing that you're a three-dimensional human that like deals with all this, and it's not like you like are willing to go to places that are sometimes not as fun to talk about but are
Yeah.
important to hear in these podcasts, like talking about anxiety and depression and your experiences as queer people, minorities, but then also like having a goobery time making cum jokes or whatever you do. Like that's not you, that's a Mike Bloom, that's specifically Mike Bloom. That's
I appreciate
specifically
them.
Mike Bloom.
I think
That's a
Mike's
shout out.
hilarious.
But like you like that was, I don't know. Like when in doubt, make a cum joke is
off
kind of
off
like his
podcasts
bag.
usually. Yeah.
But like you can make us laugh, you can make us cry, you can make us feel, you can make us happy. And like
Yeah.
you are the types of voices that I most appreciate, especially when I'm struggling. Because there's like it's such a it's not even a talent, it's just like who you are as individuals that like allow you to be so talented. And I just want to give all these people that I listed and like many more that I can't even think of right now, like, you know when your mind goes blank, it's like one of
Uh-huh.
those moments, but like just like I
Yeah.
hope you appreciate how much you all matter to people like me and to Helga
Oh.
in Norway. If there is a Helga in Norway listening to this, please tweet at us. I would love to meet you. You can have a special media made me episode about you.
Well, let me just say this actually. Let me actually go off script. There's not a script.
There's a script, man.
Let me go off like off whatever. Off something. You know when your mind just goes blank, Felipe?
You know what
That's
I
what's
just said?
happening. But no, let me go off script for a second because if you are listening to this podcast right now and listening to the sound of our voices an hour and a half in, like you thank you. Like, thank you so much genuinely for caring about anything that we have to say. It means the world, but it means the world, especially in a world where queer people, where people of color continue to be marginalized, increasingly, even in many ways, like face legislation that's trying to push us out of existence, that face lots of just hate and dark shit. And so I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart because I appreciate you, the listener, so much. And I really want to invite you, like, yes, you, like literally you. If you are you, yeah, I'm gonna say it a number more times. You. Like literally, if you're hearing this, I'm actually talking to you. Please reach out to us. Like
Yeah.
send us, tweet us, of course. You could tweet us using a hashtag. I did this once before, like multiple years ago. And I'm gonna give a hashtag. Can I give a hashtag,
Yeah,
Felipe?
absolutely. I love doing the hashtag. I feel like people don't do hashtags enough anymore. But it was a very core part of early RHAP was doing, or like early mid RHAP, like around San Juan del Sur, they would do a hashtag at the end of the episode. So let's bring it back, Matt.
Well, we're bringing it back to the Brazilian Dragon podcast. Hashtag bigger than the game. This is bigger than the games that we love to watch. This is bigger than the shows that we love to watch. Hashtag bigger than the game. Use that hashtag. Tweet us. You could find me on all the platforms at Matt Scotchy W, all the things. But I just want to say, like, let us know that you're here because like we're in this together. Like your
Like in
voice
High School
matters to
Musical,
us.
we're
We're doing
all
this.
in this
We are
together.
literally all in this together. So I'm so appreciative. I'm so appreciative. But just
And
want
I'm
to thank you
appreciative of
for
you,
having me.
Matt.
Yes. So that I don't know. Is there anything else you have to say about hashtags?
Hashtag bigger than the game. Uh, and I love that. So I'm just really thankful for this conversation that we've been having, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I love that that last question kind of turned into like the power of storytelling because that's something that you're very good at. And like not to steal from Pod Friends, but if this was like, I feel like that could be the title of your episode, "The Power of Storytelling." Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but you're just an incredible voice in our community. You always champion all types of storytelling and diversity. And so yeah, I'm just grateful that we have your voice and that you're a
Me,
part of
me
this. And
too.
yes, be
Me
grateful for
too.
your own voice, Matt.
No, I'm just grateful that I'm able to use my voice and
Yes.
to be here and be heard and like be understood, but also help others be heard and seen and understood. You know, and it means the world and it
Yeah.
matters, right? So, hopefully, there's actually not even hopefully. I know that I'll always find more and more opportunities to do that, whatever that looks like. But I'm just thankful for anyone who's willing to sit and listen to my voice genuinely. I don't take that for granted because there are a lot of people that won't. There are a lot of people that won't.
I
It's true.
will. I sign up.
Yeah, there are a lot of people also who will, and I am so grateful for them.
Yeah.
And they mean the world. You mean the world, Felipe.
Oh my God, thank you. You
You
mean the
do.
world, Matt.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We
Um,
mean the world. We are
what
the world.
other we are the world. What other media has shaped you that we have yet to discuss, if
Well,
there's anything
okay,
else.
I feel like we need to talk about pro wrestling
Go
more,
back. Yeah, let's go back to
and
the
I
pro wrestling.
just need you to ask me more about pro wrestling too,
Okay, did
but
you ever watch the show Mucha Lucha?
no,
It was a
thankfully.
Cartoon Network
I was
show.
aware of it,
Okay.
though. I was aware of it, but it was like, I was aware of it, but it wasn't. I was already probably too deep into pro wrestling by that point. Of like, oh well, this is I probably wasn't gatekeepy about it, but it just never was like a thought. Like, oh, I should watch the animated version
You
of
never wanted
this.
to go to Luchaville?
No, I never wanted to go to Luchaville. I also didn't watch Nacho Libre.
A Mike White joint?
I
You didn't
mean,
watch it? I've never seen it either.
I also didn't watch the Emoji Movie. I love
Have
White
you
Lotus
seen
though.
Migration? That's a
No.
Mike White project. The new duck movie about the ducks
Oh.
that fly south for the winter.
Oh, well,
It's from
damn.
Illumination. Have you seen The White Lotus?
Uh, what is that a question?
Yes.
I have seen it. I've
Okay,
loved
love
it.
it.
I love
Okay,
that
good.
show so much. It's like a guilty pleasure of mine. I actually, believe it or not, the first episode of The White Lotus that I watched was literally the first episode I watched, Felipe, was the season finale of season 2.
Matt!
And then I binged season 1 and season 2.
I'm
And
screaming.
by the way, it was so satisfying to have watched the season finale of season 2 and then to watch all of season 2 and be like, "Oh my gosh, I know where this is going," or, "Oh, that didn't make sense. That makes sense now." Oh, it Mike White. Mike White, you were robbed. You were robbed.
He
Like,
won that
you were
season, if you
robbed. You
ask
should
me.
have won Survivor.
He
You should
did
have
win
won.
Survivor. We just don't talk about it as a society because, for whatever reason, I don't know.
Oh, he won Survivor, but
He won
somebody
Survivor David
else
vs.
took
Goliath. I
the
don't know what season
money.
you watched.
I don't yeah, I don't remember. I don't know. I didn't remember him winning, but I also don't remember there being a winner. There was a
I remember something
loser.
about cousins wanting to fuck and someone being for that.
I can't talk about that. I can't talk about that situation. It's gross, but also
It's so
I have
gross. That man sucks. Not Mike
yeah,
White, just to be clear. Just to be clear.
no,
Do not
I
take that
have
out of context.
no, there's oh god.
Let's talk about
It's
something
like
else. Let's go
moving
back
on.
to Ozzy.
I have
Let's go back
nothing to
to
say. They said, "Let's
Ozzy.
go back to cousins." I'm like, "What? No." But no.
Who are some of
Yeah.
your favorite wrestlers besides you mentioned Lita earlier?
Oh, yeah, I love Lita. And I also actually interviewed Lita like 5 years ago in person. It was like a cool full circle moment in life. But um I have a lot. I mean, well, okay, let me say this. I don't know if this question is the best question for me because I'm also someone who has struggled with the idea of being a fan of pro wrestling. Like, I've definitely considered myself, I think, my whole life a little bit more of like a critic, an analyst, a student of it than a fan at times. So I had people I enjoyed for sure. And there's so many characters. There are also a lot of problematic characters within it. But now my favorite thing about pro wrestling is just like black representation in particular. So I love Bianca Belair, black woman who also like represents even just from the perspective of having like this beautiful long braid and just being beautiful and strong, and she calls herself the EST, like the fastest, the
Is she
strongest, the
single?
toughest. She is married and
Damn,
she
you
has a
can't set me
show
up with
actually.
her.
She has a show that just came out called Love and WWE on Hulu. So plug for Bianca's new show with her husband Montez.
Ugh,
You could
I
take it
wanted
up
to
with
be her
him.
husband.
You
No,
could
no, no,
take it
I'm
up with
good.
him. Take it up with
He
him.
can beat me up. He can hurt me. I'm okay.
I don't know. I don't know. I would love to see that fight actually. So, I mean, if you want to come to
You want me to go? Will
WrestleMania,
you pay my hospital bills?
no, I won't. But I feel like you could do a GoFundMe for that, and I'll donate for sure. I'll support. I love like Sasha Banks, aka Mercedes Monet, is another one, another black woman in wrestling. I feel like anytime for like now, especially seeing black people, but like it's really like I always loved the women's wrestlers more than even the men. Just for like everything they are and just like how hard they had to work, like such an uphill battle for women
Mhm.
in the wrestling industry than even the men. Even behind the scenes, just a lot of dark things that the women have had to
Oh, I'm
deal with.
sure.
And I am just so appreciative and grateful for them. But yeah, like I think more than anything, I've always just been a fan of the idea of like these diverse characters that we get. And I don't even mean like because pro wrestling has a history of like offensive diversity in many ways. Very offensive characters going back to the 80s, 90s in particular, even like early 2000s. Uh, but I loved like I just loved the range of characters. I love the range of moves. I love the physical abilities that they have. I most of all though, I think I love and appreciate that despite the fact that pro wrestling is something that people look at and they're like, it's fake. Do you know it's fake? I'm like, literally everyone knows that it's not, that it's like not, they're not actually fighting. We get it. Duh. Like this, like,
And
have you
who
ever
cares?
seen
Stop
a,
trying to yuck your yum.
well, no, it's not even that. Cause like, like find better ways to yuck my yum, you know, like that's not like, because some people think like the base level it's fake. Like, yeah, have you ever been to a movie before? Like those are scripted too. It's a whole thing. It's not, no one thinks, but like the athleticism and everything that you see, and it's only one take, just like stand-up comedy in a lot of ways. Like it's someone out there and they could either shine and do everything they're supposed to do, or they could like literally fall on their face or whatever else worse bad things could happen. And it's amazing to see people shine doing it, because it is actually like a very um dangerous thing, which has been evidenced by things that have happened, injuries and the like that have happened to folks that have been involved. So I always appreciate what they do and how good they are doing it.
Not to change topics, but you mentioned
No.
stand-up. Are you a stand-up person at all? Like, do you
No.
enjoy consuming?
No,
No,
and
you
I
just use it
don't
as a.
really, I'll watch it sometimes, but no, I'm not a huge fan of stand-up. I'm embarrassed to say that there was a point in my teen years, and exclusively in my teen years, where I was, a Dane Cook fan.
Mm.
You know, that's dark. It was really dark.
Um,
I thought he was funny.
as long as you're a Kevin McLean fan,
Uh, I am a Kevin McLean fan.
we
More
do
than
love
a
that.
Dane Cook fan for sure. For stand up. That's totally it. No, I mean I enjoy stand up. I've had friends who've done stand up. But I don't know. I think for me, it's like always the cleverness and the wit that goes into it that's most impressive. And again, like in pro wrestling, you'll even have elements of that you see. There are great pro wrestlers and amazing ones and charismatic ones. Like The Rock is a great example of someone like that who just resonates, transcends pro wrestling to all of media. Um, but you know, then there are also horrible pro wrestlers, and it helps me appreciate that not everyone has what it takes to shine in the ways that the best really do. Especially
What
because
a
I mentioned like I visited like independent wrestling shows a lot in my teens as a kid. So I would go from like these WWE shows that had like tens of thousands of people there. I'm going to WrestleMania with Mari in April, and there will be like probably 80,000
You
people
should
there,
bring
right?
Ari Ferrari.
I have to see if Ari Ferrari is going to be there. Actually, I know I've
I
talked with him about it.
love Ari Ferrari, and when I heard that you and Mari and Ari went to a
Oh,
wrestling thing
Survivor
together,
Series, yeah,
yeah,
WWE Survivor Series.
I was so
We
jealous that I
did.
wasn't there, even though I've never seen wrestling in my life.
Hey, you could be a wrestler one day. You
I
still
could.
got it. You still got it. I feel like you could do it. Just pick a character. What would be your wrestling name?
The Brazilian Dragon?
Okay, what are you wearing when you come out? Like you Okay, wait,
I
no,
don't know.
before that, what is the music? Like what music is playing? What's your theme song? We're workshopping this.
Something like Disney Channel, like we're all in this together. I feel like is a pump up song. No, no,
I don't think that works. You need something a
no.
little bit more like add like
Maybe
maybe that.
Anita,
Maybe actually no, we're gonna go. We're all in this together, but like do like a rock remix or like an EDM
ooh,
remix, like
or Demi Lovato, Confident.
Oh man.
Da-da-da.
Yeah, I like that, but I just think you need to add like an even
We gotta
harder
do a
edge to the
workshop
remix.
together. We'll create wrestling characters for ourselves.
And then I could also picture you like we need to have a thing where you blow fire. Actually, there was totally a wrestler. I'm thinking of Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. He was a wrestler back in the day before my time for sure, but he blew fire sometimes, I think. So look him up. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Ricky
Yes.
Steamboat. Great wrestler. And he as the kids would say, he wrestled the house down boots, and he also he also like had a whole dragon thing going on, so you could be like him. I hope I'm gonna Google him too to see if
He's still
the
alive.
oh yeah, he's still alive, which you can't say for a lot of wrestlers back in those days. But
Yeah.
no, oh my gosh, no, literally, Felipe, if you didn't, I'm gonna just show you this. I'm dropping this picture in there. Check it out. Ricky the
Is
Dragon
this gonna give
Steamboat
me a
wore
virus?
dragon wings. No,
Oh no.
wore dragon wings. Uh, blew some fire. Didn't burn himself. Amazing wrestler.
I
That's
will say
you,
I feel like
except
wrestler could
newer.
make me feel I feel like if I were a wrestler, I would want to make sure I look sexy because that's so
Hey,
important. If I'm gonna be shirtless, we're gonna make it work. So I gotta work out first a little bit more.
well, you could wear whatever you want to wear. Some wrestlers do wear shirts, but you could wear whatever you
No,
want.
the ladies are showing up. I gotta go full
Oh my
chest.
gosh. You don't need to, look, you could go full chest now. You don't even need to like come on. I'm telling you, you fit right into pro wrestling right now. You've got it.
We'll chat. We'll chat. We'll continue this conversation because I need a
Yeah,
character. I need to work it.
hashtag hashtag
I don't want to fall on my
bigger
face.
than the
My face is
game.
too pretty to get broken.
I wouldn't like you to fall on your
I don't
face
want my
either.
teeth to be
I agree.
broken. But like,
That's
what's
true.
your familiarity with the Edge? Are you a
The
fan?
edge? What's the edge?
What's his real name? Adam Copeland.
Oh, a wrestler. The
Yeah,
wrestler. Edge, just Edge.
Edge.
Yeah,
Sorry,
Edge.
I just
Adam
know of a
Cope.
different kind of Edge
How do you know
of
him?
extinction. No, because he was in the Percy
Oh.
Jackson show.
Wait, what was he doing on the Percy Jackson show?
He played Ares, and he's really good in it.
Was it like one episode?
He's no in a couple episodes. He's like in the back half of the
Wow.
series or the season.
I know him very well. He's still in wrestling. He's still wrestling actually.
Yeah.
He's probably been wrestling like 25 to 30 years at this point. No, definitely more than 25 years. He was in WWE like 25. He started in WWE probably like 25, 30 years ago. So I'm very
Yeah.
familiar. Edge, what a Hall of Famer, one of the multi-time world champions, main eventer, big time star. But I didn't know he was on Percy
Should
Jackson.
Mari get into wrestling? Should Mari be a wrestler?
Not right now.
No? Okay.
She shouldn't be a wrestler. No,
Yeah.
I don't think
She
the
should be a
hits are great.
commentator.
She could be a commentator if she
Yeah. No,
wants.
because
No, well,
I
I,
feel like
I mean,
you, me, and
she's
Mari
like
and Ari, we should go be wrestlers.
you, all of us.
Yeah, because I like to travel in groups. I don't like to go to try things out by myself.
Honestly, I don't know. I don't know if that would be a great group or not.
That is a great squad at all
It
times.
is a great in wrestling though. You're
Oh,
not you don't have the
I don't know
wrestling
enough about
skills.
wrestling. I just meant
You
like
don't have
going
the
to an
wrestling
event.
skills. Mari and I would be a really great wrestling tag team though, specifically. I do feel like Ari and I were part of Survivor Philadelphia,
Yeah.
and I just feel like at some point if we're in the same group, like one of us is going to turn against the other one
Oh
and
no.
screw the other over. So I don't know. I'm a little nervous about that, but we have explored the idea of us being in a group. And then you added into the group is an interesting X factor with all of it. And I don't really know what to make of that. I don't know. Like, do you have a vision of what you would do in the group?
I have no idea
Are
how
you the
wrestling
glue?
works.
You're the glue.
I would wear like Brazil colors. I would
I
probably like
think
try
you
to
could.
get blue spandex of sorts.
No, don't wrestle. You don't need to be a wrestler. You can be a manager. Just wear
Ooh.
a suit. Wear a suit. Be like our Hollywood
But then I
representation.
can't breathe fire.
You don't need to though. Like you could just be in a suit.
Yeah. Um,
that looks like a dragon,
I
but
feel like
also
Mike Bloom.
slays.
I could see Mike Bloom getting in the wrestling ring.
I can't see that
He
either
dresses up in
because
ridiculous costumes all the time.
he has the costumes, but I just don't think he would. I just okay. If you want to, I'm gonna pretend you asked me the question, Matt. Who would be
Who
great
would
pro
be a great
wrestlers
pro wrestler
from
from RHAP?
RHAP?
I asked you the
So
question first.
Chappelle would. I think Chappelle would be an amazing pro wrestler. He's got the promo skills. He's got the height. He's got the agility. I think he'd be
He has
phenomenal.
the energy. He
He
also
has
has
the
the smack
energy.
talk.
He has this 100%, all of it. So he's great. I think that who else would be really great? I mean, Puya easily. Puya has a wrestling championship belt. He like put him in there. Like he'd be amazing too. Who else would be really great? I think Sasha would be a great pro wrestler, and because I could just imagine like 100%, the character would be amazing, but also it would be very interesting to see her in the ring because she calls herself fun size. Like she's someone who could be really agile, and I would love to see Sasha versus someone like someone taller, like a Brian Scally, for example, where it's like the thing where it's like Sasha's winning, but they have all these matches like Rey Mysterio versus the Big Show, or even like Sasha versus me, as an example, would be a thing where it's like this big contrast. I would love to see. I think that's a really solid list of people who could
I want to see
be
America
Bryce.
Lopez do wrestling.
Bryce would be
Bryce.
good in wrestling. He'd be amazing. Wendell would be good in wrestling. America Lopez. America would be really great. I could see her. I could see her really competing and everything
Yeah.
in there with time. There are a lot of people. I mean, we could go on and on with this. I almost feel like there needs to be a separate podcast that is an RHAP pro wrestling draft where we draft either people who are on RHAP as podcasters or who have appeared on RHAP, like reality stars, maybe beyond the exit interviews, like people who've appeared on like recaps and things like that. Because I do think that would be a really great draft. And I would get the best pro wrestling squad. And then my team would go up against your team and it would go up against I don't know, Mari's drafting, like go up against Mari's team, I don't know who would approve of this idea, but
who needs approval when you have your own podcast network? Feel free to come do it on the Brazilian Dragon anytime.
Sure, I'll keep it in mind. I have to. No, I mean, I think that it might be taken down. I don't know if anyone's going to appreciate being drafted to a wrestling league, but who knows? Or like not being the first draft pick, for instance. Like I don't ever want to be the fifth. I'm okay with it, but who wants to be the fifth draft pick to a wrestling league?
Matt, anything else you want to add about media that shaped you as we start to wind things down?
It's complicated. There's a lot of different media out there. There's a lot of things that shape us. So
what are you watching right now besides the stuff that we've talked about? What's in recent media that made you? How about we start
oh my
winding things down with that?
gosh, that's really challenging. I'm watching The Traders
Have you
on
seen last night's
Peacock.
episode?
No, we can't talk
Okay, I
about
won't
it.
say anything.
I'm watching RuPaul's Drag Race, and that's coming out tonight. I'm watching wrestling, like I said. I'm watching. What else am I watching right now? You know what? I don't really even know if I'm watching anything too current week to week. I'm sure I'm missing some stuff, but I find so much solace in the busyness of life with just like going back and watching like Always Sunny in Philadelphia. That's one that I find myself appreciating because I'm like, these people are horrible and this is offensive, but offensive in a way where I'm like, okay, I'm glad that you acknowledge you're horrible. I've watched like maybe 7 seasons of that show, and there are like 15. And so I'm really actually interested in seeing how it evolves when it's like, yeah, that episode that we did in season 3 was way too problematic. Like, I'm very curious to understand what the show is like now because it's still on. So I guess catching up on that. I don't know if we didn't talk about how sorry, this is not what
Go
I'm
on.
watching now, but I used to watch Desperate Housewives. I do put on an
I did not know
episode
that.
here and there. I know I watched it when I was when I was in middle school, I was watching Desperate Housewives. I
Love
actually
that.
wrote an essay. I had to write an essay to get into like the school that I went to, the Catholic school I went to. And I
Yeah.
remember just being like, look at what America is, and not America Lopez. Like, look at what's happening with America, that we have shows like Desperate Housewives and all this crap. And I don't even think I'd watch the show at that point, but I love that show. I love it. I could watch it any day. So, I think especially when there's just so much happening in the world, it does feel nice to go back to like the shows we love and just to like take them in again or catch up on something old that won't be like super I was gonna say super problematic, but something old that won't like totally traumatize you or something. It's
Yeah.
great. So I don't know if anyone has recommendations for things I should watch. Let me know.
Tweet at Matt and then also use hashtag bigger than the game.
Yes, hashtag bigger than the game at Matt Scott GW on
Yeah.
X, and you could also reach out to me on Instagram too. But
Love it.
love
Well,
to be here. Is there what are you up to and doing? I don't know. I'm just handing it
I was
back
gonna
to
throw
you
it back
to
to you
ask
and be
you.
like, do you have any plugs?
Oh, yeah, I mentioned so the wrestling wrap up. Rob has a website.com/wrestling feed, Pod Friends. Rob has a website.com/Pod Friends feed. Each of those have their own individual podcasts. And yeah, lots of fun. We're having fun. We're having fun on all
Love
the
that.
pods. Those are my plugs. And yeah, I mean, if you want to check out the docuseries I do, you could go to drawdown.org/neighborhood. That's DRAWDOWN.org/neighborhood. Episodes are up there and other places and things. But those are my plugs, I think. Do you have
Love it.
plugs?
Yeah.
Am I
Yeah,
supposed to ask you
I
that?
have a quick plug. So the Phineas
Yeah.
and Ferb podcast is back. What you doing? And in terms of the Brazilian Dragon, we have the ball rolling on pre-production for a lot of fun stuff. Stay
Ooh.
tuned on the socials at What the Fleep for my main, at Brazil Dragon Pod on Twitter, at the Brazilian
Ooh.
Dragon on Instagram and TikTok. I have a comedy show on Friday, February 9th. It's called Goat
Yes.
Show LA Aliens in Love. I'm performing comedy, but it's a variety show. Tickets are $10 and it's at the Pico Playhouse here in Los
Ooh.
Angeles. Come check it out. Info is on my Instagram. But otherwise, hashtag bigger than the game. Matt, any final things you want to say?
Yeah, I mean, I'm look, in today's world, I'm just shocked that anyone could watch you for only $10. Like $10, that's so
I mean, if
affordable.
you want to Venmo me, we can discuss what
No,
you
no, no. What you'll do for $10.
for more.
Um look, I'm just saying, people show up to the comedy show, Venmo Felipe.
It's not my Venmo, it's Goat Show LA, I think it's the Venmo. But
Like I
well,
said, Venmo Felipe, and you know, maybe you won't be able to get into the show, but you'll have the satisfaction of supporting an incredible artist, an incredible luminary, incredible talent, an incredible podcaster, an incredible producer, an incredible entrepreneur, an incredible friend, an incredible advocate, an incredible human being in Felipe, the
Matt, you
Brazilian
are
dragon.
too kind. Thank you so much for letting me get to know you better and the media that made you. Go check out Pod Friends because it's truly a work of art, masterpiece theater. And I am better for having listened to Pod Friends.
Pod
Um,
friends, pod friends.
I don't know the song, but shout out to Will from America.
Yes, shout out to him. Shout out to him for
But
that. Thank you,
Matt,
Will.
thank you so much for joining me. This has been an absolute treat and delight. Obrigadero for listening, everyone. We'll catch you on the
Yes.
next podcast. Bye bye.
Bye.